Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. So today's episode is one that was requested by a couple of the members of my online Facebook support group. And it's about listening. And so, I'll dive into everything in a bit. But this was requested. The request came on the heels of the interview that I did with the formerly estranged and now reconciled adult child, A.C. Bergen-Fisher. And I received several comments about how I listened to him during that interview, and moms wanted to know how I do that, or how to listen in a way that allows our adult children to be heard, and to hopefully heal relationships. So that's what today's episode is about, and we'll get into that in a minute. Before we get started, I did want to announce that the support group, Zoom support group for estranged moms, will resume in February. The first meeting will be on Saturday, the 4th of February. And this is it's a very structured support group. It runs bi-weekly for 4 months, so a total of 8 meetings, and it's not a time for moms to gather to just gripe and complain. There's purpose and intent behind this support group. There are lessons, there's homework. And so if you're interested in joining that support group, there is a fee involved, because we are learning, we are growing, we are actively doing very structured things to help you as an estranged mom. If you're interested in that, let me know. There is some criteria to meet before joining. And so you can email me at theestrangedheart@gmail.com. And I'm happy to give you more information or put you on the list to join. Also, starting in February is a requested support group, again, via Zoom. And this one will be for moms who are recently reconciled with their adult children. And I think if you fit in that category, you understand the difference. There comes a different concerns and challenges that come with being reconciled. Things don't just disappear and everything's happy, happy, joy, joy once you become reconciled. So I've created a separate support group for those moms, and that will start on Friday, February the 3rd. And again, that fits the same thing. It will run bi-weekly for 4 months for a total of 8 meetings. It's very structured. There is a fee involved with that as well. And if you're interested, again, some criteria to meet with that. And if you're interested in that, feel free to email me. I can give you more information and put you on the list to be notified on how to join. And that email address is theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Okay, as we dive into today's episode, I have some quotes. The first is, "If you're not listening, you're not learning." And that is by Lyndon Baines Johnson. The second is, "The world listen, the the word listen has the same letters as the word silent. And that is by Alfred Brendel. The third is listening is not understanding the words of the question asked. Listening is understanding why the question was asked in the first place. And that is by Simon Sinek. And the final one is listening is an attitude of the heart, a genuine desire to be with another, which both attracts and heals. And that is by L.J. Isham. So as we begin today's episode, I wanted to kind of do what we did with last week's episode on boundaries, is to give you definition on what the word listen means and the word hearing means. Because I think that we get these two really mixed up. We tend to hear and not listen. So listen is a verb, and it means to give one's attention to sound. And hearing is a noun, the faculty of perceiving sound. And it also means an opportunity to state one's case. So I found that when I looked, was doing the study and research for today's episode, I found that very interesting because, we talk about like court hearings and, those types of things. And it's really, in those hearings, it's to go in and state your case. This is what I believe. This is what I think happened. This is, all of those things. And I think that we, as parents, when we're coming from the managerial role, instead of a role of a consultant, as I talk about often, is that we are coming in hearing. And hearing being the noun of a hearing to come in and state your case, right? We are, quote unquote, listening to our children, and the entire time they're talking, we are building our defense. We're building our case. And especially when it comes to estrangement and our children telling us things that are really difficult to hear, right? We're not listening to them. We are hearing them. We are physically hearing the sounds that come out of their mouth, but we are not listening to the words. And that is where things go sideways. This is why our children, every estranged adult child that I have ever talked to, or formerly estranged adult child, every single one of them say, I've been talking about this for years. I've been trying to get them to hear me. I've been trying to get them to listen to me. And every estranged parent says, this came out of the blue. I had no idea. They never said a word to me. And so I find that fascinating. And this happened with my own children. As a matter of fact, what I was told was, we couldn't get you to listen any other way other than to cut off contact, to get your attention. So, all of these estranged adult children cannot be wrong. I mean, if I met 10 estranged adult children and 2 of them said, I've been talking about this for years and they just don't listen, and 8 of them were like, oh yeah, this came out of the blue, then I'd be agreeing with the parents. But every single one of them, if you go onto social media, you don't even have to take it from me, just go on social media. Go onto the sites where the estranged adult children, and I don't mean sites, I mean like therapists who work with estranged children and adult children and things like that. If you go on their social media pages and you read the comments from estranged adult children, most of them, the majority of them, talk about how they tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and the parents just didn't listen. So from that perspective is what I want to talk about today, right? If you are a manager as a parent, you are most oftentimes hearing and not listening. If you are a consultant, you are listening versus hearing, more hearing. So, when I was estranged from my daughters, I too thought this came out of the blue. This was crazy. I mean, I thought all the things that estranged parents think, right? And when I got into digging in and trying to figure out where things went sideways, and then after I talked with my adult children as we began to reconcile, we never had that, the quote unquote, the talk until 4 years after reconciling. But prior to that, we had miscellaneous talks, and that's when I heard we had no other choice. We tried to talk to you. We tried to tell you, and you just refused to listen. And so I had to take that and think about that and sit with that. And over time, I came to see that they were absolutely correct. The issue was that I did not want to hear what they had to say. Let me say that again. I did not want to hear what they had to say. I was too busy being a manager, telling them what to do, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, with who to do it, and too busy stating my case to hear what was actually being said. There's a fine art to that. It's a skill set, and it's not something that a lot of people have. We are not taught how to listen. We mimic what we're taught, and we are taught how to state our case. Think about it. If you're an estranged parent, what did your parents do? Did they really sit down and listen to you and validate you and empathize with you and take all the things that you said in? I'm guessing not. Because I know the older generations, they were not interested. The kids were to be seen and not heard. Right? And that's not how it is today. And it's really, in my opinion, not how it should have been done then, way back in the day. We are all human beings, children included. And they have minds of their own. They have desires of their own, interests of their own, all of those things. And they have every right, just like we do, to express those. So, where do things get off track? Right? How do we get them back on track? First of all, for me, it was impossible for me to hear and listen to my children until I found someone to hear me. And this is what I hear so many times from estranged parents. Well, if they want me to listen to them, then they, by God, need to listen to me. And I'm here to tell you, That's not true. And if you're waiting for that to happen, you will find yourself estranged year after year after year after year after year. How would you feel? I mean, you're feeling it right now. Your kids are not listening to you, right? So turn those tables. And you're not listening to your children. And you, as the parent, by default, hold more power. It's a power dynamic here. Any parent, I don't care how old you are, you stand in a place of power over your children. I don't care if you're 80 and they're 50. You hold the power. Therefore, it is your responsibility, in my opinion, and I know I get lots of flack about this, but it is up to the parent to lead the way. And it is not up to your kid to hear you first. They've been hearing you. Their entire life, they have been hearing you. They hear what you expect of them, how disappointed you are in them, yada, 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 yada. I mean, it's just the way that it is. So I knew that I needed to be heard. No one was hearing my side of the story. That's why I talked about it in therapy. You have got to find yourself a neutral third party who can hold that space for you as an estranged parent, either a therapist or a skilled estrangement coach who can listen to you and validate you. This is what I do with my clients. This is why my clients talk about how well I listen and why they want to work with me. And I know that I have a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot. I have listeners of this podcast who think that I side solely with the adult children. And that is so, it is so false. I'm not siding with anyone. I'm trying to get both people, the parent and the child, to heal and come back into relationship. But in order to do that, there are things that must be done. It must be done in a somewhat of a specific order and way. And that means the parent has to lead the way. The parent gets themselves into therapy or with an estrangement coach, and they begin working through their stuff. Now, I believe you need to be in therapy, because it is in therapy that you will begin working on your own childhood stuff, your past stuff, which is affecting how you operate in the world today, which also affects your listening skills. Because until we are seen, heard, and validated as a human being, it is next to impossible to see, hear, and validate others, including your children. So I got myself into therapy, and my therapist listened to me. And I say it all the time. My therapist, she heard the what fors, and, I cursed my kids, and I talked about how ungrateful they were. I mean, I let it fly. But I did all of that in the safety of a therapy room. I did not say those things to my children. I did not say those things to their siblings. I did not say those things to their friends or my friends where it would get back to my children. I talked about it with my therapist. And my therapist is the one who said, I hear you. I hear that this is so unbelievably painful for you. And that's what I do for my coaching clients. Because I've been there. I know the pain. I remember being in the fetal position on the floor sobbing. But that did not get me anywhere. To have shared all of that with my children would have not gotten me anywhere. So I was seen, heard, and validated by my therapist. And then things began to, I no longer had the need or felt the need for my children to hear my side of the story and to understand where I'm coming from. And by God, I didn't mean any of that stuff. And it was no longer important to me because I had been seen, heard, and validated. And then that is how I learned to listen to my children. That is how I learned the skill, the fine art of listening. And that is why I can do that today. I can hear very hard things today. And it doesn't mean that I don't get triggered. It doesn't mean that I don't get pissed off. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. But I'm not triggered in a way that I feel like I have to state my case and defend myself and justify and all of these things. I just don't. And this is what happens. That exact same scenario is exactly what happens when you listen to your adult children. Eventually, they get to a place where they are no longer interested in justifying and defending and doing all the things, and you can come back into relationship with your children. Okay? So how do we do this, right? Another thing that I want to talk about just real quickly is that listening is not enduring. Like, oh my God, I have to sit here and I have to listen to them just go off about all the shit that I did wrong. Like that has the flavor and energy of you having to endure a conversation. And if you are doing that, you are not listening. You are hearing. You're not listening. Okay, so I just want to put that out there. Again, it's really difficult to hear others if we ourselves have not been heard. And you have to understand it's important to be selective in who gets the privilege of hearing your story, of hearing your pain, of hearing your sorrow, and all of those things. And that, again, is what a therapist or an estrangement coach is for. Those are people who can hold that space for you and validate those feelings for you. Okay? To listen. What does that mean? How do we do that? How do we get better at that? To listen, I believe, number one, you have to do your own healing work. Again, what I was just talking about. You've got to be heard before you can listen to others. It really is that important. And I know that there are people who get tired of hearing me go on and on and on about therapy, but I am here to tell you, it is what I see. The clients that I have, that I work with, whether I'm paid clients or unpaid clients, the clients that I work with that have the most success in reconciling and staying reconciled are those who are in therapy. So, just going to put that out there. You got to do your own healing work. Number two, you have to develop a sense of curiosity and learning the skill of asking questions without sounding judgmental or accusing, etc., right? Being able to have a sense of curiosity, a deep, authentic curiosity on why someone may say the things that they say, why someone may believe the things they believe. And that's a skill set. That is not something that's taught. You're not going to, I mean, seriously, it's a skill set. Number 3, patience is essential. You've got to get comfortable with silence. And I'm here to tell you that it's a rare case if you yourself have not been seen, heard, and validated. Sitting in the silence of someone else while listening to them is next to impossible. I couldn't do it. I absolutely could not do it. Yeah, I couldn't. And today I can. And if just as a trial exercise, if you're talking with a friend or, a partner, a spouse, what have you, and it's a conversation that's maybe not necessarily heated, but a pretty intense conversation, and they stop talking, try it. Try just they stop talking and you don't jump in to say something. And see how comfortable you are sitting in that silence with no one talking. Because it's in that silence, that's where things can shift and change for the better. Because when you can sit in the silence, you're also not judging and defending and, stating your case. And finally, I want to just kind of talk about, the things that are the qualities of a good listener, right? And first of all, listening, you have to be in the here and now. You've got to be present. If you're thinking about, well, they're talking and I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that and this and that and the other thing, you're in the future. You're doing the future tripping. You're not in the present. You're not listening to what they're saying. So you've got to be right here, right now. Okay, not worried about what was said last week when you talked to them or, the 500 other conversations you've had that turned south or any of those things. You got to be right here, right now. Number 2, no distractions. If someone is talking to you and you're looking at your phone or you're out at maybe you're in a cafe somewhere and you're turning your head and watching other people walk away and coming in and going out and those kinds of things, you're distracted. You're not listening to that person. Listening takes eye contact. If you're at home and you're messing around with your dog or your cat or you're washing dishes or you're up, folding clothes or you're not listening. You're multitasking. And when you multitask, your attention is divided. You do not have 100% attention on any one thing. And the person that you're quote unquote listening to knows that. And they know they don't have your full attention. Again, think about how you feel when you're talking to someone and they're distracted. Okay? So, again, you have to be in the here and now and no distractions. Again, the sense of curiosity, being curious with sincere curiosity. Being open-minded and releasing what I call attachment to your own story. Kind of like they must be like me, believe like me, or else they're my enemy. And that's not the case. Most people, to be open-minded, you have to entertain something being different than what you know or what you believe, etc. The next piece is you're not interested in judging, but rather learning. When you are listening and you're judging every word that's coming out of their mouth, you're not listening. You're hearing and you're judging. When you're listening, you're taking that information in and you're learning about this person. You are learning more and more and more about this person. Okay, and I'm always talking about, getting beneath the surface. This is where that comes into play. Is you're listening and you're like, what is what is happening beneath the surface here with this person? If I listen, they're going to give me clues and I can learn more. Okay? The next thing is you accept the opinions of others while dialing your opinions back. Again, you're listening to learn versus listening to judge and defend your case. And then the final two things are you do not interrupt. And I can't tell you how many times I see this happen, and I was the worst at this before my estrangement. The absolute worst. I'd cut somebody off in half a nanosecond because I was too busy trying to defend my case, defend my belief, defend what I thought was right. And so I was always interrupting people. And I don't know about you, but when I'm interrupted and I'm talking, it's like I give up. And most of our kids do that. We when we're coming from a managerial place instead of that of a consultant, we are cutting our kids off when they're talking because we feel like we have something bigger, better, more important to say, and or we're, justifying and defending and all of those things for ourselves. And then the final thing is to know your limits, right? And this is another piece to it. Recognize, until you are seen, heard, and validated, it's going to be really hard for you to recognize your limits. And when you can begin to learn what your triggers are, and you learn when you're wading into deeper waters of a conversation, and it's going to quickly either take you under with the undertow, or a wave is going to come up and knock you on your ass. And to recognize when that's happening, there are graceful ways to exit a conversation. And that, again, that's another art and skill to learn, instead of just abruptly getting up and running away, sobbing, crying, and just in this panic mode of, I've got to get out of here. I got to get out of here kind of thing. But it's super important, and you are entitled, just like your child is. You are entitled to know where your limits are and to exit a conversation when you've reached that limit, or you are approaching that limit. I prefer when you're approaching the limit before you actually get to the limit. So those are my takes on how to listen to people. The skill and art of listening is just that. We have to learn how to do it. And for most of us, the way to learn how to do that is to have others show us how to do that when they're listening to us. We learn by watching others, right? So I am probably going to do later on in the year a workshop on this. And so if you're interested in something along those lines, feel free to email me and I can put you on the list for that. But I do feel that it is a skill that we as parents really, really need to learn. And I know that when I learned how to do this, it absolutely changed my relationship with my children. And it changed not just my relationship with my children, it changed my relationship with everybody in my life, personally, professionally, and otherwise. I mean, it just changes everything. And so I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any input or would like any additional information or information about my coaching services, or would like to be a guest on the show, please feel free to email me. And again, that email is theestrangedheart@gmail.com. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent, and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.